From the beginning, we've always been an organization that was willing to take risks, to take chances, to step out ourselves. And then we wanted to invite others to step out and pursue radical things that God may be calling them to. And this trip represents that.
It's gorgeous. Just seeing the bigness and awesomeness and creativity of our Heavenly Father it's been astonishing. This is going to be what my soul needs.
I need adventure, and this offers me that kind of a crazy God time that isn't predictable.
The more that you're willing to take the next corner, the more you're willing to take that extra step, that extra leap, if you're doing it in faith, you're doing it with the right intentions, God rewards the curious.
Sometimes God calls us into the unknown, into things that just make no sense. And until we take that step, we'll never get how much this does make sense. We're going to explore this mysterious, wild, unpredictable nature of God. This journey will awaken them to that passionate pursuit of God and the things that He may be calling and inviting them to. Something's going to happen here. There we go. That video is so what Thin Places is all about. It's this invitation into a bigger story that God entices and invites us. And man, I don't know what you feel like when you saw that video, but that's the same for me. I'm just like, okay, I want to go again. Ronnie had so much adrenaline going up that cliff. That was on the last day we got there that I thought he was going to launch. You know, I mean, he's just like glad he stopped at the edge because it was just so thrilling. It's been great being here these last few weeks with you and seeing the passion and the connection of this place and coming in here again and seeing how much, you know, you're excited to gather and listen in on screen. And it's been, I know where I'd go to church if I was up here in Omaha, and knowing Ronnie since his teenage years. I mean, he brings the same fervor and passion and the leadership team here too. Just amazing to be a part of. So really glad to be back, and I wish I had time to tell you all the Thin Place moments that people have told me over the years, including some of you a couple weeks ago, because it's so encouraging and so inspiring. But this last summer, had a guy yell across the street. I was in downtown Lincoln saying, "Hey, I had a Thin Place moment. Can I tell you about it?" No idea who he was, and he dashed across the street, about got hit by a bus, almost had a very Thin Place moment, but told me the story. It was great. And a few weeks after that, a woman came up and said, "Could I tell you a story that my sister had, this Thin Place moment she had?" Her and her family going through a really hard stretch. They live in Michigan, and I've been telling her about this Thin Place stuff, and she said they just felt like they wanted to do something as a family that's really cool for them. They go rock hunting in northern Lake Superior. Apparently there's some rare rocks there at certain times of year they can find, and so they were just trying to get some refuge and retreat, and they're waist deep in water looking around. Something draws her attention, and she reaches down and pulls up this rock, and on the rock it said, "You need to know God loves you," written on the rock. And she said the story didn't end there. Her husband is telling this story to a church that he was speaking at a few weeks later in that area of Michigan, and someone in the back said, that was my rock. I wrote on that rock, threw it in there a couple years ago, just hopes that it would be there to encourage somebody someday. And so the Thin Place moment, you want something to stick? Put it on a rock. Put it on stone, right? In 2017, I'm going back to my hometown, Kennesaw, Nebraska. Grew up on a farm in central Nebraska, and I don't get back there much anymore because my parents have been gone a long time and nothing to draw me back. But this time I was going back for a high school class reunion. And when I do get out there, I like to run through the cemetery to see the markers for my parents. because they're so much, so them. On my mom's marker, it says there's a song in my heart. And she was a creative, out-of-the-box thinker, always pushing my dad to new experiences, new adventures, including the faith journey that she introduced him to. It's where I got a lot of that kind of thinking from her, for sure. And on my dad's stone, well done, good and faithful servant. Didn't need to say anything more about him than that. Same guy on day one that you met him, that he was the last day of his life. Radical investor in people, even though he was a farmer. At his funeral, there was probably 6 men that came to me and said, I lost my best friend today. I mean, he just had that ability to invest deeply in people. And so remember that marker. You want to leave something? Leave it on stone. Don't forget it. So I go back into town after being at the cemetery, and there's the high school. It's a big brick school built in the early 60s on the edge of town. And as I come in, forgot this little memory that when I was very little, the class of 1970 decided to mark their moment and wrote Senior 70 on the brick across the front in huge letters. And here we are almost 50 years later, and it's still there. The school can't get it off town. They've tried everything to get that off, that marker off. Senior 70, still faint, but still visible on that school all those years later. You want to leave something that lasts? Mark it on stone. Put it on a rock. You know, later that year, I was in a very familiar place, sitting on a very familiar rock in San Diego Harbor. In the leadership journeys we do with Harbor, we take people on 2 and 3 year journeys. In the second year, we take all the groups to San Diego, at a specific place there, close to the Navy base where the Navy SEALs train, because it's such a great picture of mission and Harbor that you need both. And you and I need both in life to make that work. But this was about the 26th group that we brought to that place. I was weary. It was the summer that we were walking through some hard stuff. I think I talked to you a little bit about that with my daughter's journey 2 weeks ago when I was here, if you heard. And it was just a hard year. And I was also on the last stages of finishing up the Thin Place book. And the words just dried up. I had nothing left. I didn't know if I wanted to finish that project or do the work I was doing at all. And as I sat on that rock that day and again the next day, I wrote this in my journal. I just wanted to read it to you quick. It says, September of 2017, as I sit on this rock in this very familiar place, my words have dried up. I wonder if I have anything left to say. I don't think I can finish this project. But at that moment, I was reminded of some words I'd written when we first launched Harbor Ministries a few years ago. A time when I was ready to abandon the faith journey then altogether. Those words said that God does not promise to spare us from heartbreak or struggle, that pursuing and following God as best we can does not make us exempt from disappointment or even traumatic events. But He does promise to walk through all of it with us. Every moment, every high and low, every turn, He'll give us what we need to take that next step. As my own words sunk in that day, I was reminded again of Psalms 37, do not fret. Wait on God. Don't worry. Rest in God. Do not fret. He is our strength in time of trouble. And as I continued to sit, I say to you, the wind began to come back in my sails. And the words started to come. And the writing project, Thin Places, that I've been stuck on for months, was finished within hours. And I was overcome by this wave of thankfulness for the journey I'd been on, seeing all the dramatic change of these rhythm and rogue events. That night came another Thin Place moment, a gift of my favorite artist in concert, Tom Petty, just north of San Diego. And hearing his words that you never know how long you have, so make the most of it. Keep swinging. Don't back down. I came away with this renewed determination that no matter what the circumstances, to make the most of the days in front of me, to keep swinging to the end. What Petty didn't know that night was that 2 weeks later, he would die of a massive heart attack. It was his 40th anniversary tour. And the Thin Place moment in the midst of that concert for me was right before he sang the song, Won't Back Down, kind of his iconic song. He said, we've been asked, how long will Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers play? And as long as people keep coming, and as long as they have joy, and as long as God gives us till one of us drops, we're going to play to the end. And it was kind of a moment frozen in time for me. It's like, okay, I mean, it's just like everything kind of stopped. It's like, that's it. That's a Thin Place moment that I need to say, keep swinging, no matter what life throws at, no matter what else comes my way, keep following God, keep taking that next step. He'll be with us. And like I said, Tom Petty did die 2 weeks later. It was the second to his last concert. But he, in that moment, inspired me to keep swinging to the end. When I was last on this stage, we talked about Moses and that initial call he got, that thin place moment in the desert. You know, when God spoke to him through the midst of a burning bush, but he didn't speak to him till when? Till Moses turned and paid attention. And I've found when you want to really look at the journey of men and women, and it's not just how they start, it's how they finish. And so we wanted to take a look at how Moses finished this journey, because he did take the words and he did act on them, and he went back to Egypt, and through an amazing amount of circumstances led the people out of Egypt, out of slavery, to freedom, and wanted to take them, as God had instructed him, to the promised land, to the land God had said, the Hebrew people will get this. He promised them for generations, and this is their moment. And so he parts the Red Sea in an amazing miracle. They go through the Red Sea and they come up to the promised land. And what happens in that moment? They send spies across the land, and the people see who's inhabiting the land. Giants, fortified cities, armies, people everywhere. They begin to get fearful and they say, we don't have a chance. Even after all they'd seen of God bringing them through, and the miracle of taking them out of slavery, bringing them to freedom, parting the Red Sea to walk through. Even after all that, they doubted and struggled. And so God said, in disappointment and struggle, because these people have doubted, I'm casting them back into the desert. And they're going to wander for 40 more years until that whole generation that's doubted me is gone. And by the way, Moses, you got another 40-year stint in the desert. You got to lead them. I mean, that's not a gig you want to sign up for, probably. 40 years wandering in the desert with hundreds of thousands of people until they all die off and the next generation comes. That's his job and his task, and that's what he does. And so now fast forward 40 years later, here comes Moses with the Hebrew people. They're still following him. Why? They're still following him because he meets with God. I mean, that's why. And they're still following him. And is he still following God? Is he still turning his attention to it? Wanted to show you a passage in Deuteronomy 24. As he brings the people to the Jordan River, they haven't crossed yet, and God invites them to come up on a walk with him, come up a mountain, and see the land of which God has promised them. It's in Deuteronomy 34, Then the Lord said to him, this is the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm giving it to your descendants, Moses. I have let you see it with your own eyes, but you shall not go over there. So Moses died there in the land of Moab according to the word of the Lord. And although Moses was 120 years old when he died, his eyes were not dim, nor his vigor abated. Okay, what? I mean, think about that a minute. What? He picks Moses, leads the people to freedom. They turn him down, so Moses has got to lead him for another 40 years in the desert while they are discouraged and all that. And he brings them back, and God takes them up the mountain and says, this is the land I'm giving, but by the way, you're not going in there. Joshua's going to take the people across. I've always struggled with that story, always. I mean, for years. Because that kind of seems cruel, doesn't it? I mean, just hard. Like, you kidding? I mean, I know he made mistakes along the way, but seriously? You know, you're just going to let him gaze on it, and yeah, but you're not going over there. Struggle with that until I saw what this story was really about, until I saw the relational context of this story. A relationship and an ongoing walk with God that Moses started in that desert 40 years before that, in the burning bush moment. And you see time after time after time throughout Scripture, time after time, of God and Moses on a journey, sometimes for days on end. Sometimes those thin place moments lasted for 40 days as they connected and taught and communicated. When you see that part of the story in Moses' finish line through a relational context, everything changes. Now you see God and Moses going up this mountain and walking side by side. And God saying, Moses, look, all this land, that's what this has been about. I'm giving this all to the people, all to your descendants. And you know what? Moses, you did it. You stayed the course. You stayed the course. You walked with me to the end. Well done. Man, well done. You got him here. Now Joshua's going to take them across. And you don't see Moses push back. You don't see struggle with him. In that moment, you have to assume that God was enough. That he didn't need to cross that river. Didn't need to get that final thing. Didn't need to make that sail to feel better about himself or the next thing. That God in that moment was enough. Great question as we end this year of 2020. And all that we've been through and the uncertainty and the struggle and the good things as well have been out there. Is God enough in this moment? If some of these things continued, sure hope not, but if some of the themes and things continued, would God be enough to sustain us in that moment? It sure was for Moses. And man, when you look at how somebody starts and how somebody finishes, that's good stuff right there. And so now the baton has been passed from Moses to Joshua in a very public way, and Joshua is the man to lead the nation of Israel, the Hebrew people, across the Jordan River and to the promised land that's been promised forever. And Joshua has to be incredibly overwhelmed at this moment. The man that they've been following for 40 years is gone. He's been the right-hand guy. All of a sudden, it's him. He has to be incredibly overwhelmed at that moment. He sits on the cusp of history. This thing that's been written for years and years and years about and told through generations. He sits on the cusp of history, desperately needing God to show up, desperately needing something, desperately needing a thin place moment to mark this moment. And Joshua gets his too. And it's found right away, the first few verses in Joshua 1. And we got to read this together as God gives Joshua this thin place moment and words that he can hang on to for his whole life. And by the way, not just words for Joshua. It's in that Bible for a reason. It's there for you and I too. So feel this as we read this passage out of Joshua 1. Joshua 1, 1-9. It says, "Now it came about after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, that the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, and Moses' servant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. So therefore arise, cross the Jordan River, you and all the people, you'll lead them to the land which I'm giving them. Every place which the sole of your foot treads I have given to you. Just as I spoke to Moses, it's the same for you. No man will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. Just as I've been with Moses, I'll be with you. I will not fail you. I will not forsake you. So Joshua, be strong. Be courageous. You shall give the people possession of the land. Only Joshua, again, be strong, be courageous. Be careful to do all the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it right or left. The book of the law shall not depart from your mouth. You shall meditate on it day and night. Do according to that, and you will have success. Verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Joshua, be strong. Be courageous. Do not tremble. Do not be dismayed. For the Lord your God, He's with you wherever you go. Several things come to mind there, right? God's a God of second chances. Once again, He brings a whole country back and gives them another chance, another opportunity. He's a God of second chances. Thank goodness for you and I that that's the case. He's a God of second chances, and His words and promises hold. His words and promises have held for hundreds of years to these people as He brings them back. And His words and promises hold for Joshua as well in this moment. In these words, he tells Joshua, there is enemies across this river. When we get to this land that I promised you, it's not going to be easy. Same is true for you and I. In this faith journey doesn't make, if you take the first step of that even today, or in recent times, you and I both know that's not going to be the end of it. There's going to be struggle. It doesn't solve those kind of things. It does solve the fact that God's with us every moment of the way. And so the promise, again, through these words of Joshua is stand your ground. Hang on these words. Don't back down. You got one life and you got one shot at this, Joshua. Take these people across the river and don't let them forget that I'm going to be with them every step of the way. There's going to be enemies over there. They're going to back you up to the gates of hell. But don't back down. Stand your ground. There's going to be fight after fight. The world's going to throw you around. But stand your ground. Don't back down. Ask Justin to sing a song by the great worship leader Tom Petty in this moment. Probably not what you're expecting to hear this morning. But he talks about standing your ground. and not backing down. This has been a rally cry song for all the leadership groups we've led over the last 10 years. And the last night we're together, we got them to rail and sing on this song. And my most big memory was the first group we did of a bunch of pastors. They were older pastors from around the country. They gathered 50 and 60 years old. And we broke into this song, and to see them go over this song and say, I'm going to stand in this moment. I'm going to stand my ground. It was great. It was awesome. And so I asked Justin to sing this. And my hope is that as you hear this now, but as you hear it on the radio or in the mall or in your car or whatever, that it'll be a thin place moment to you to bring you back to this series, to bring you back to Joshua 1, that he can give you the strength and the courage you need for anything you face in the days and months ahead.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. No, I stand my ground, won't be turned around, and I keep this world from dragging me down. Gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey, I will stand my ground, and I won't back down. Well, I know what's right, and I got just one life in a world that keeps on pushing me around, but I stand my ground, and I won't back down.
Use anything. In a context, he's created all of it. He can use anything to break through for a thin place moment. Music and the arts, sunset, what he's created out there, and the beauty of what we see. People, a conversation, a moment. He can use anything. And my world stopped at the moment that song was sang in that concert a few years ago and said, keep swinging, don't back down. And I think that's what happened with Joshua in this moment too, is God gave him these words: be strong, be courageous. You are going to face many enemies. There is going to be struggles. But stand your ground. Hang in there. Take the next steps you need to take. Maybe it's that first step you need to take, the most courageous of all in that faith journey. Hang in there. Stand your ground. We need that. We need to remember those words as we finish this incredibly radical year of 2020. Need to remember and not forget. So Joshua is determined not to forget. He's been given these words in this moment, and he's not going to forget. But you know what? God's not going to let the people forget either. Not this time. Not this generation. Not going to let them turn back. You can't forget what I've done, how I'm going to be with you. I brought you to this moment. So we pick up the story back in Joshua 4, the fourth chapter, as Joshua now emerges, determined not to forget and to take the people across the river, to take the people across the Jordan River and claim the land God's given them, no matter what they will face over there. And so here's the scene. They're crossing the river. God has dried up the Jordan River and stopped it so they can cross on dry ground. And we're not talking about a crossing of a group this size or some families. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people. Men, women, children, livestock, all they're bringing with them, all they've been living with, is all coming across the river in a movement to claim the ground, the land that God had given them. So hundreds of thousands of people crossing. And behind them comes the priests who are carrying the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant holds the stones that God has written on the Ten Commandments, and the priests are carrying that in the ark, and they're coming across the river on dry ground. And behind them comes the army, ready for battle, whatever they will face coming forward. And so in the midst of this crossing, most of the people are across, and God tells Joshua, stop the priests in their tracks in the middle of the river. Tell them to hold ground. Tell them to stand firm, is literally the words that's used. Hold their ground. And then Joshua gets the 12 leaders, the best leaders of all the hundreds of thousands, one from each tribe. There was 12 tribes. Get the best and send them back to where the priests are holding their ground with the Ark of the Covenant. And I want them to pick up a stone each. Not a stone like this, because the text says they carried it on their back. So whatever they could carry, they load up this stone on each of their backs, and those 12 men take 12 stones, and they come across the dry river in front of all the people, and they're going to plant them where they're going to encamp that night, because God doesn't want them to forget. Those stones are going to stay there forever. So not only you, but your children and the children's children will not forget this moment that God did. Don't forget those in place moments when they come. And so those 12 carry those boulders off. That's the scene. And then the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant come. And they come out of the river through the people. And then the army comes. It says 40,000 battle-ready soldiers, ready to say game on to whatever enemy they're going to face over there. And they cross in front of the people. Now that's a moment. That's marking a moment. And they go through the people, and they say, the text says they head to the plains of Jericho. Where are they going? To the baddest city in the territory, Jericho. Walls of stone, fortresses, feared soldiers. They're going to the hardest place first to make their statement, and the warriors head out in a statement that will never be forgotten, I guarantee, by any. Why does God put this on in this moment? Why does this story happen? We see it in the last part of Joshua 4, a couple verses. I want to read them to you. It really starts in verse 20. Those 12 stones which they had taken from the Jordan, Joshua set up at Gilgal. He said to the sons of Israel, when your children ask their fathers in times to come, what are these stones? Then you shall inform your children, Israel crossed the Jordan River on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of Jordan before you, just as the Lord your God did that to the Red Sea 40 years before when he dried that up until we had all crossed. And then verse 24, this is the why. That all the people of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, that you will fear the Lord your God forever. The Message translation of verse 24 says, this happened so that everyone on earth would recognize how God's strong hand is a rescuing hand, and so that you will hold God in solemn reverence always. This moment was so they wouldn't forget, not this time. And I think that's my hope as we finish this radical, impossible, uncertain, hard year of 2020, that we won't forget the moments, even in this year, that God showed up. That people are going to have staying power, that they're going to have solid ground. They can't forget. They can't forget. They got to hang on to this moment. So how do we do that as we head into the last few weeks of 2020? Thank goodness, right? A few more weeks. This is one year. I never want to wish by time, but you know, this wouldn't be all bad to finish this year out. Who knows what's going to be holding for us in the months, years to come. But what do we do to mark these moments so that we can best stand our ground? Stand strong, be courageous, take the steps God's willing and wants us to take. Here's a couple things I'm doing and would just invite you to think about. Number one is don't do this alone. Don't do this alone. The spiritual journey, I mean, you get isolated, you get picked off. I mean, that's just the way it goes. You get discouraged, gets easy. Don't do this alone. Get some people around you. I made the mistake of doing this alone. Several years ago, I was leading Youth for Christ Campus Life. It's when I first got to meet Ronnie, actually. He was a teenager at the time. Still had the same passion and charge that he has now. A little more unbridled, but it was good. But I remember thinking when he was young and at a ski trip, this is somebody, if he stays the course throughout the context of his life, he's going to lead some great things. Knew it. You could see it then. Don't do this alone. And when I was leading that organization that time, we had 45 salaried people, hundreds of volunteers. Reaching thousands of kids a week was a great time, but I had isolated as a leader. And honestly, it was one of the more lonely times of my life, even though we had all these great people around us. It was a really lonely, hard time, and I got in a dangerous spot and making some mistakes that could have cost me, because I didn't invite people in. So I'd encourage you to not do this alone. That'd be one commitment you can make. Since I've been coming up here the last couple of weeks, I've heard the theme of small groups and encouraging you all to connect, and man, I'd really encourage that. I know it's risky, to think about jumping in with, maybe it's with people you don't know, and you never know what clicks, what doesn't, but it's worth it. It's worth a shot. Don't do this alone. Get some people around you to encourage you. Second thing, mark this moment for others. You have a chance in your families as a dad or as a mom, with the kids or with your friends, at school, others, to really mark moments and make them significant. Make them things that people won't forget. God marked that moment that we just talked about. We see Moses and Joshua doing that throughout their life. He's done that to us with thin places. Is there ways we can encourage and mark moments for others to make it memorable, especially as we head to the end of this year? At Thanksgiving, when I have 20 and 30-something kids, a couple grandkids, and we were kind of gathered around, my question of the Thanksgiving was, is there something in 2020 that you're thankful for that was a cool deal that wouldn't have happened without COVID? Is there a way to flip the script on this year and say there was something really, really amazing that happened without COVID? I'm not going to lie to you, no one had an answer for that right away but me. And then I got a chance to think about it, but we're going to circle back on it at Christmas. But we got to change the perspective. Is there some things that wouldn't happen? One thing, man, is it great being able to, connect when we do get a chance? That passionate pursuit of God was difference making for me through the context of this year because it was so desperate. Needed Him. Needed that presence, needed God in the most of that because, hey, what if we don't come out of this? There's just a lot of questions, especially back in April and May, right? That was one. I think from a ministry standpoint that I lead, there was multiple creative projects that would never have happened because we were so busy with events and people. Everything shut down. For several months, we were able to turn out a couple creative projects, a new music album. We got a new devotional book that helps with times of quiet and solitude and space that actually just came to print this week. Maybe check that out. That might be a source to help you. Kind of going forward. Those things would not have happened minus COVID. We started a podcast that's reaching a lot of people now that I never would have guessed. That's going. All those things are called space. All that happened. There's probably things in your life that wouldn't have happened. Mark the moments for yourself and others. Third thing you could do, stay alert. We talked about this last time when I was here. Stay alert. Whatever we need to do, as Ronnie has said multiple times here, you can't create those thin place moments. That's God's job. But our job is to stay alert, to be willing to turn when those moments come. Stay alert. What's that look like? A lot of different things. I think, but one is what I invited you to do 2 weeks ago when I was here. Take an hour a week to just listen and to be quiet and kind of get alone and see if God has something for you in those moments. I asked you to consider thinking about that for an hour a week for December. What I would encourage you to do is a big challenge is to think about an hour a week through 2021. Make that a part of your life and practice of just an hour of quieting down, listening, and see what God has for you in a moment. And practice that idea of solitude, of space. Be pretty sweet. Think about it this way. There's about 1,000-ish people that maybe connect with relevant in one way or another, maybe more, I'm not sure, but say 1,000 people. weekend. If you guys were all committed to an hour a week, just of solitude, of quiet, of listening to see what God may have for you in a moment, 1,000 hours a week, 4,000 hours a month, 48,000 hours in 2021 of people listening. Could you imagine what could be done and what might happen? I said I wanted to talk Ronnie into let me come back at the end of 21 and hearing some of your stories. It'd be amazing. It'd be incredible. So consider doing that to end that in a practical little thing that could really help. And then lastly, don't forget. Don't forget yourself. I guarantee you Joshua never forgot those words that were given to him in that moment. That's what gave him strength, because his life was one battle after another, leading the nation, the Hebrew people, against one battle after another as they claimed the land that was promised them. Don't forget. Here's what I do. 2 things. I have rocks. I love rocks. I gather a few of them when I'm on some epic trip or place. These came from the bottom of that cliff in Iceland, the video you saw. But I have a few around my office, and one is a memory. So I look back, and this one says tour on it. In 2019, we took a tour of several cities around the country for Harbor Ministries. We have leaders that come in from all over for our leadership events. And there's 11 cities where a lot of people came, and we went to all 11 cities last summer, or that summer of 2019, Minneapolis to Virginia Beach to Tampa Bay to Los Angeles, Phoenix, and just story after story of being with people that we journeyed with over 10 years. They're still chasing God, they're still pursuing Him. And that's given me fuel to make it through this year when all of our events got canceled and everything got shut down. It's like, keep that in front of you. So I look back, and then I look forward. Last Rock is looking forward, and this time of year, I always ask God for a moment, a word, a phrase, or something I could theme my life around for the next year. And this last year was lighten and strengthen for 2020. I needed that as the events unfolded. And this year, it's keep radically investing in leaders, and I've got that written on a rock. Keep radically investing in leaders so that can change the world. And that's going to drive me through 2021 no matter what obstacles we face. So I want to finish my time with you guys by reading a few verses out of Joshua 1 again in this prayer. It's the best thing I could do to close this moment with you. It's been an absolute riot to be here. And I would just say, as I read these words, if you just kind of enter into this moment and see what God would have for you in the words that were given Joshua centuries ago, that are still real and relevant for you and I today, as real now as they were then. There's something in this passage for you this morning. I truly believe that. So let's end with Joshua 1. After the death of Moses, God spoke to Joshua and said, "Moses, my servant, is dead, so get going, Joshua. Cross the Jordan River, you and all the people. Cross to the country I'm giving to the people of Israel, because I'm giving you every square inch of this land you set foot on. Just as I promised Moses, I'm promising you. All your life, no one will be able to hold out against you. In the same way I was with Moses, I'll be with you. I will not give up on you. I won't leave you." So strength, courage. You're going to lead this people to inherit the land that I promised them. Give it everything you have, Joshua. Give it everything you have, Relevant Church. Your heart, your soul. Make sure you carry out the revelation Moses commanded you, every bit of it. Don't get off track, either left or right, so as to make sure you get where you're going. And don't for a minute let the book of Revelation be out of your mind. Ponder it. Meditate on it. Make sure you practice everything in it. Then you'll get where you're going. Then you'll succeed. Haven't I commanded you? Strength, courage. Don't be timid. Don't get discouraged, because God, your God, He is with each of you every step you take.
You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail, and there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep. My faith will stand, and I will call upon your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours, and you are mine. Your grace abounds in deepest waters. Your sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you never fail, and you won't start now. And I will call upon your name, and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours, and you are mine.
So God, you're the one and only. So I'll wait for you as long as you say, because everything I hope for comes from you. So why not? Even when oceans rise and fear surrounds us, why not follow you straight into the dark? Life is short. The obstacle's great, the darkness and opposition, too intense to do this alone. Don't do this alone. No matter how hard the struggle or oppressing the questions, no matter how deafening the silence or how long a time in the wilderness, we can still find you. We can still find you in thin places all along our journeys. And Psalm 62 says, you're a solid rock under our feet, breathing room for our soul, an impregnable castle. With you we are set for life. My help and glory are in you, God. You're our granite strength, our safe harbor. So trust in you absolutely. Lay out our life before you. For God, he's an anchor. He's solid. He's steady. He's a rock. He's a safe place for us.
Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters My soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours, and you are mine.
Lord, I pray that we choose just to follow you where your Spirit leads, that we choose to not back down, we choose to stand strong. Lord, and in that, and following you, whatever that means today, that we hold on, that we don't forget, I pray that we recognize and we experience you in a life-transforming way, whatever lies ahead. Pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.